Welcome back, students. Life process lesson la we'll continue with the respiration part. We have so far completed nutrition, autotrophic and heterotropic nutrition. We'll continue with the respiration part. So respiration part வந்துட்டு நம்ம என்ன படிக்க போறோம்னா மெயினா இதுல வந்துட்டு we have already seen nutrition வந்துட்டு it is obtained from nutrition is obtained from the food we consume, and food in the food வந்துட்டு it is broken. Food is being broken down, which is called as digestion, is digested to produce simple nutrients. The most common simple nutrient that is produced is going to be glucose, and this glucose எதுக்காக வந்துட்டு குளுக்கோஸை ப்ரொடியூஸ் பண்ணதுன்னா cells, this glucose has to be broken down to release energy, and the release of energy from glucose is the process what we call it as respiration. So the breakdown of glucose to produce energy is called as respiration. So glucose, we know it is a 6-carbon compound. We have already seen it in the nutrition part. Glucose is a 6-carbon compound. This glucose is going to be taken to all cells of the body, and it is going to be present in the cytoplasm. And in cytoplasm, this glucose is broken down with the help of many enzymes to form pyruvate, or also called as the pyruvic acid, and this is a 3-carbon compound. So this one happens in cytoplasm with the help of enzymes, and this pyruvate can take up 2 different types of processes. One is called as, so the process of breakdown of glucose, we know it is respiration. In the pyruvate vandute, it can take up either aerobic respiration or anaerobic respiration. Aerobic respiration அப்படினா வந்துட்டு the further breakdown is going to happen in presence of oxygen. Only in presence of oxygen the breakdown is going to happen. In presence of oxygen, when this pyruvate is being broken down, it is converted into carbon dioxide, water and energy. And this aerobic respiration to break down pyruvate to form carbon dioxide, water and energy is going to happen in the mitochondria of the cell. So it is going to happen in the mitochondria of the cell. Whereas anaerobic respiration, it can be again done in 2 ways. So anaerobic respiration abdina, from the name itself, it is anaerobic, that is it can be happening in without oxygen. So under 2 conditions, 2 different ways they are going to function. One is in lack of oxygen, that is lack of oxygen, there was oxygen present there, but suddenly if oxygen is not available in that condition, so normally aerobic irukka pogudhu, sometimes when the oxygen is lacking, that is it is reduced in its quantity or it is not available, that time cells can take up anaerobic respiration. In lack of oxygen, what happens is this pyruvate is converted into lactic acid and energy, and this lactic acid is also a 3-carbon compound. So there is no release of carbon dioxide here, because pyruvate is also a 3-carbon compound, lactic acid is also a 3-carbon, so there is no release of carbon dioxide here. This happens most commonly in our muscle cells. And in absence of oxygen, complete absence of oxygen, this is another type of anaerobic respiration which is going to happen only in absence of oxygen. It is not lack of oxygen, it is complete absence of oxygen. And when anaerobic respiration is happening in absence of oxygen, it is called as fermentation process. The process is called as fermentation, and this most commonly happens in yeast. And the products of fermentation is going to be ethanol, which is going to be a 2-carbon compound, and a carbon dioxide and water molecule. And now what is this energy formed? So energy nu sonno, what is this energy? Energy in which form it is going to be produced is ATP. ATP, we know this is a form of chemical energy because it is a chemical substance which is having energy in it, so called as chemical energy. So where is the energy present here? ATP means it is adenosine triphosphate. That is one adenosine molecule. To this there would be 3 phosphate molecules attached, and first phosphate is attached with a normal ester bond, and the second phosphate and the third phosphates are attached with energy bonds. So when these energy bonds are broken, they can release up to nearly 30.5 kilojoule per molecule of ATP. So this is why this ATP is called as the chemical energy. And the production of ATP is going to happen in mitochondria. Energy is going to be produced in mitochondria mainly by aerobic respiration. It is produced in mitochondria. So mitochondria is called as the energy powerhouse of the cell, and this ATP is called as the energy currency of the cell. So mitochondria called as powerhouse of the cell, and ATP called as the energy currency or simply currency of the cell. So now what we have to come into the notice for importantly for respiration is oxygen is required for respiration. So anaerobic respiration we are not going to talk it in detail because it is not going to happen in the humans very regularly. It is going to be only in lack of oxygen. These muscle cells are going to take up lactic acid production by anaerobic respiration. The most common method of respiration, that is the breakdown of glucose finally into energy, is going to happen in mitochondria in presence of oxygen. So the oxygen is required for respiration. How is this oxygen taken in? So when it is required, it has to be taken inside the body in some way. So how is the body going to take in this oxygen? If the animal is going to be unicellular, then the oxygen uptake of oxygen can be by simple diffusion process. Whereas in multicellular organisms that is not possible. So if a multicellular organism has to take oxygen, it has to have some organs or systems that are going to help in uptake of oxygen. Such organs which are going to help in uptake of oxygen, we call it as the respiratory system. This is in case of animals. If it is going to be multicellular plants, they are going to perform photosynthesis during daytime, that is when light is available, during which they are going to take in carbon dioxide and leave out oxygen. Whereas during daytime, based on their need, plants can take in oxygen and leave out carbon dioxide. So this process can also be called as the respiration. So it is depending on the photosynthesis, that is the taking in of oxygen and leaving out of carbon dioxide is done by plants only based on their need. If at all they need, they are going to purposely take in oxygen and carbon dioxide, leave out carbon dioxide. Otherwise, they are going to do this mainly on the surface of the cells by diffusion or with the help of stomata when they need alone. Now, respiration in animals, multicellular animals specifically. Animals, they can be both aquatic as well as terrestrial. If the animal is going to be aquatic, they are dependent only on the dissolved oxygen present in water. They cannot come out of water for respiration, so they are going to depend on dissolved oxygen present in the water. But generally, the dissolved oxygen quantity is going to be very less in water. For this purpose, what they do is, because dissolved oxygen quantity is less, their breathing rate of breathing of aquatic animals, aquatic multicellular animals, is going to be higher, so that they take in more amount of oxygen, or they take in enough amount of oxygen they need. For example, in fishes, the respiratory organs are going to be gills. But fishes, they are not going to take water through gills alone. That is, they take water with gills also, but not only with gills alone. What they do, fishes, what they generally do is, they are going to drink water and pass this water to gills, so that more amount of water is going to reach the gills and more amount of oxygen can be taken in from through the gills. So just to make more amount of water to reach to gills, so not just by opening their gill slits, they are also going to drink water through their mouth, so that that water is passed on into gills and more amount of oxygen can be taken in by the fishes. Coming to terrestrial animals. Terrestrial animals, they also have different structures to help in taking in of oxygen. And terrestrial animals, the source of oxygen is going to be the atmospheric oxygen that is present in air. And they take in this atmospheric oxygen by process called breathing. So they take in oxygen by process called as breathing, and their oxygen intake into system, that is, the entering into the body is by breathing, whereas intake into the system to reach the cells, they have to help or they have to have some surfaces. So they would have special surfaces for exchange of the gases. Exchange of gases here usually refers to oxygen and carbon dioxide, because oxygen has taken in, meantime carbon dioxide, that is a product of aerobic respiration, has to be left out of the body. So these surfaces that are going to help in take the oxygen into the system to reach the cells will help in taking in of oxygen and leaving out of carbon dioxide, and these surfaces are generally called as respiratory surfaces. And there are some special characteristic for this for organs or to structures to act as respiratory surface. So the characteristic of the respiratory surface is that they should have a large surface area, so that more amount of oxygen can be taken in, and they have to be thin, so that diffusion from the atmosphere into the body and from the body into the atmosphere can be very easy. And they have to be protected highly, because they should not be damaged. They have to be protected highly. For this purpose, they are going to be present inside the body. Most probably, most of the animals are going to have their respiratory surfaces inside their body cavity. And they should have mechanisms that assist movement of air carrying oxygen or carbon dioxide in and out of the surface. So respiratory surface there should be some mechanisms that is going to help the air come inside the body and move outside the body also. And for very large animals, usually very large animals, so for larger animals there are special structures called as respiratory pigments, which are going to help in carrying the gases. So these also is seen in larger animals. The respiratory pigments example is hemoglobin, that is present in our blood, which is present on the surface of RBC. So once the air enters into the lungs, they would immediately diffuse into the blood. In the blood, that oxygen would be accepted by the hemoglobin molecule, which easily transports that oxygen. So now these are the general characteristic for an organ to have respiratory surface. And in higher classes you will be studying about the different respiratory organs present in different animals. And in this lesson we will concentrate about the human respiratory system in humans. So the entry point are going to be nostrils. So nostrils are the opening that is going to help in taking in oxygen, or taking in the air with oxygen into the body. And this nostrils has fine hair growth and mucus. The function of this hair growth and mucus is to trap any dust present in the air that we are going to inhale. So from nostrils, the air is going to pass on to pharynx region, which is present in our throat, and then from pharynx it is going to enter into a tubular structure, which we commonly called as the windpipe. And the first part of windpipe is going to be larynx. So larynx is going to be the first part of windpipe, and larynx commonly called as voice box. And larynx continues with a tubular structure which is called as trachea, and trachea is going to form two branches which are called as bronchi. They are called as the primary bronchi. And this primary bronchi is going to enter into lungs. So the air that is going to enter into the body is going to be through the nostrils, and from nostrils it is going to pass on through a structure, a tubular structure which is called as nasal chamber, and this is going to open into the throat region, which we call it as the pharynx. So these are the nostrils. This is going to be the pharynx region, and here in the pharynx region there is a long tubular structure that is going to be formed, which we commonly call it as the windpipe. And the first part of windpipe, so this part alone, so what I am drawing it here is this part alone. This part is called as the larynx. Larynx, first part of windpipe, and then is going to be the windpipe. This part is called as trachea, and trachea is going to be protected by cartilaginous rings, C-shaped cartilaginous, incomplete cartilaginous rings, so that this pipe is not collapsed. That is, it maintains its diameter. For that purpose, it is going to have cartilaginous rings, which are going to protect the windpipe or trachea. Then this trachea is going to take two branches. These two branches do have these that is C-shaped rings, and these two branches are called as the primary bronchi. After this are going to enter into lungs. So we have the lungs here. Lungs are going to be more or less triangular shaped organs, and these branches, after entering inside, they are again going to form further branchings like this. So they keep on branching after that. So these branches that are formed inside the lungs, these branches are called as bronchioles. So branches of bronchi that are formed inside lungs is called as bronchioles. And these bronchioles finally they end into small bag-like structures, small sac-like structures, which are called as, so these small sac-like structures which are formed at the end of these bronchioles are called as alveoli. And what is the speciality of alveoli is the respiratory surface in humans. That is, it is the place where the actual gaseous exchange is going to happen. So alveoli is going to be the respiratory surface where gaseous exchange is going to happen, and this alveoli is richly supplied with blood vessels. So it is completely surrounded on all sides by blood vessels, so that the oxygen coming from outside can diffuse this alveoli. Alveoli is also a very thin layer of cells it is made of. It is having only one layer of cell, so the oxygen can easily diffuse from alveoli and enter into the blood vessels. In blood vessels, oxygen is taken up, or it is going to be carried by hemoglobin. Similarly, carbon dioxide from blood will enter into alveoli and is exhaled outside. That is, நம்ம breathingல taking in, leaving out அப்படின்னு சொல்கிறோம் இல்லையா. Inhalation is taking in of air and exhalation is leaving out of air. So when that from carbon dioxide from blood வந்துட்டு is going to enter into alveoli, and from alveoli in the reverse length it is going to be exhaled outside. So now oxygen is also present in blood, that is, it is carried by blood, whereas the carbon dioxide is also carried by blood. So in what forms are they carried? Oxygen is less dissolvable in blood, so it does not dissolve in blood so easily. So oxygen is carried along with hemoglobin, whereas carbon dioxide easily dissolves in blood. So carbon dioxide is going to be traveling as dissolved form in plasma. You will be studying in higher classes again what is the dissolved form of carbon dioxide that is going to be carried in the plasma. So this is how the oxygen and carbon dioxide is being carried. And we have also studied there has to be some mechanisms that are going to help in taking in air and leaving out air. So what is the mechanism present is, the mechanisms are going to help, that helps taking in air is going to be, usually for taking in or inhalation process only, there are going to be mechanisms, and exhalation is going to be the reverse. So there is no special mechanisms involved there. For taking in, for inhalations, the ribs, which are the bones that are found around the lungs, these ribs are going to move upwards, and diaphragm, which is normally dome shaped, is going to become flat. When these two happens, there is increase in area, and because of that increase in area, more air enters into the body. So this is how inhalation happens. Exhalation is going to be the reverse, that is, the ribs and diaphragm is going to come back to their original position, so the area available is going to be reduced, that pushes the blood outside the body. And one more thing what you have to study is a term called residual volume. Means the lungs are never empty, they'll always have some amount of air that is remaining back in the lungs. Amount of air that remains in lungs even after exhalation process, that is, you leave out the air, even after that there is going to be little amount of air that is present in the lungs itself, that is called as residual volume. So with this we can understand that lungs never become empty. So this is a simple process in which the oxygen is taken in from the atmosphere, and the carbon dioxide that is formed during aerobic respiration is left out into the air back. So with this we have completed the respiration part in this lesson, life process.